right, and we're back with Pastor Jimmy. Welcome to the
Thank
table.
you.
I think that's what the segment should be called.
The table.
Welcome to the table. Okay, you are the associate pastor at Hillside Church in Mankato, Minnesota, which isn't, I know you'll defend, it's more in rural Minnesota, but it's not, you don't like that term. But for people who are not familiar with Minnesota, you know that, more rural. But you've helped the church in several ways. There in the local church doing communications, youth ministry, launching the young adult ministry at your church. You've also designed everything for the conference, which is, I love it. It's amazing. So good.
Thank you.
Everyone is doing thumbs up. We love it. And you're also about to be a dad, so that's so exciting.
I know.
How soon? How long?
June 23rd
coming
is the
up.
date,
You're
so
coming. That's awesome.
I'm nervous and excited.
Yes, that's so exciting. All right, so kind of mentioned there wasn't a young adult ministry at your church when you first started. So just talk about pioneering that, what that looked like. I mean, the hills and valleys you had to climb to get there, but
hills and sides, yes, Hillside Church.
Oh, I didn't. That's good. Dad jokes here.
Yes. Oh gosh.
Oh man. But yeah, how did you do it? Starting from scratch.
Yeah, I mean, it really, for us, there was a need, and so we saw that there was. I mean, we have MSU right down the road from us, literally.
Which is
2
a
miles.
College.
Yeah. Mankato, Minnesota State University.
Yeah.
And then even where I live in St. Peter, which is 15 minutes away. There's Gustavus. And so we've got college kids really close to us. And we noticed our third service was primarily the young adults, college-age kids. And so literally it was funny when we didn't even realize it at first, but we have to now watch their calendars because there's some Sundays where they're on breaks and we don't realize it. And we're like, what's going wrong with our church? Our attendance is way down. Yeah. And it's just college kids leaving. So
you're like, oh, okay, there's some break.
Yeah, so we were paying more attention to it now. But like I said, there's a lot of kids that age, a lot of students that age that were coming, and we were saying to ourselves, man, there's an opportunity here that if we don't capitalize it, we're gonna miss it. And so we were going out with these people anyways, and I was that age. I was
you were in the same boat.
Same boat, exactly. I was in the same boat. And so a lot of my friends were in that same boat where we were just like, there's got to be something more than just being a youth leader. And so we had a lot of students who were saying, we want to feel like there's some belonging here, but we don't necessarily feel like it's in youth leadership.
That's so true. I was jump in, like, when I was a youth leader, I'm like, some youth ministries, their young adult ministry is the youth leaders.
Yes.
And that's so true.
Yes, and we didn't want that model at our church, and we knew that there was something more for it. And so that's when we started talking about ministry, full-fledged ministry. So.
Yeah, that's great. How did you get your senior leadership on board, or how did you present this idea? Because I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. Budgets, having to use different church resources. So how did you get people to jump on board, senior leadership specifically, but other people and leaders as well?
The biggest thing for me is buy-in with my senior pastor. So a lot of the things that I do in our church, I try to be really intentional that I care about the same things that my senior pastor cares about.
That's good.
And
really good.
Luckily we have a senior pastor who really values the next generation. That's kids, youth, and young adults. And so for me, it was just aligning with his vision already that was there, which is awesome because I feel like, and you've probably seen this too, that there's a lot of things that just don't get through because the senior pastor's not really on board.
Yeah.
He just wants someone to facilitate it.
Right.
And we didn't want that. We actually wanted a full-fledged ministry that the senior pastor supports because we wanted buy-in from our church.
That's good.
And so that's one thing that we kind of started with was just I had natural buy-in with my leader. And
what would you say for someone who maybe doesn't?
Yeah, I would start watching your senior pastor and care about the things that he cares about. So if he really values Sunday morning worship, maybe you start learning to play guitar to up the team a little bit, or something, try to do things that will matter to him. My senior pastor is a clean freak. And so when I'm walking into the church building, if there's trash in the parking lot, I'm picking that trash up, or I'm trying to clean up little bits here and there because I know it matters to him. It might not matter so much to me, but I know it matters to him.
Right, and you're not trying to do it to be like, I don't know, I'm things that he likes to.
No, not like manipulate him or anything like that. But you need to have a good relationship with your senior pastor. The other piece that's not, it's harder to facilitate, but our senior pastor, and this is just full-fledged transparency, our senior pastor had kids who were in the young adult age. And so there was a need because of that too, pressing need because of that. So he saw his kids going, we want something more too. So it was easy.
Yeah. How did you find people to kind of join your team besides your senior pastor, like other people to kind of help bring this ministry to life at your church?
Mm-hmm. At the time, I had an intern who was kind of helping me with every single thing that I do with my job. And when we brought up young adult ministry, she was just on fire. She loved the idea of it, really was on board. And so so that was kind of natural for me, was to look at someone like her and bring her into the leadership team.
Yeah.
Most of my teams that I develop, I tend to lean towards a triumvirate leadership model, which is kind of three working as one, which somewhat sounds familiar. Yeah. And so that's what I was looking for. I was looking for a couple other people to come alongside me where we can kind of work together as one. And so my intern was one that it was just, she was natural at it. And then I started watching the group of young adults that were coming to our church and asking myself, who are people flocking to? Because after a while, you started to notice that there was one student who was just like a magnet, a natural influencer. And I've read enough leadership books to know that you need people like that on your side. And so I pulled him in on that triumvirate team. So
yeah, that's awesome. Okay, how did you start doing things in the community? I think something that you guys kind of ran with, something called, you did pop-up parties.
Yeah.
So maybe just talk about different events, or how did you get momentum going, started? What were some key events or things that you did to get people coming and to realize like, hey, this church now has a young adult community ministry, a part of it?
Presence, yeah. The first thing, we just wanted to get started with somewhere, so we started like a small group type of meeting, which I imagine is probably a lot of people where they start. So that was just to kind of please the students who were like, we need something now. And then we planned a kind of a momentum builder in the fall when university came back, and did a bigger event, had a guest speaker in and stuff like that. But to talk on pop-up parties a little bit, you probably realize this in your own life, but with your really close friends and your family, there are some people that you have in your life that the only way you're going to ever hang out with them or ever going to see them is if you put them on your calendar. And there are people who you are closer to that if you shot a text to right now, you could probably grab lunch with them in a couple hours, or supper tonight, or go over and hang out.
They're spontaneous.
Yes, spontaneous. So there's that
type A planners.
Yes, exactly. And part of it is, and this is a little bit of jaded me, I'm a planner, is we would plan something out 6 weeks, and we would see the same attendance that if we did a spontaneous, hey guys, tonight we're doing something by the lake, we would see the same amount of numbers pretty much. And so it was like our planning, and you guys know how this is, that if it's 6 weeks out or 4 weeks out, you're like, I'll throw it on my calendar, and if nothing's trumped it by then
then I'll do it.
Yeah, then I'll do it. But so we just found that there's that closeness, that authenticity, that feeling that if we do something spontaneous, it feels more natural and less planned, which I know that really resonates.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So people like that. They
like
that
you're
idea.
doing life with them, and it's not just what you said. Let me see what I have in 2 months.
Yes.
Like you're making them a priority, like right now.
Yep.
You're doing that. Love that.
Yep.
Just talk about, like, you kind of talked about the three that you... Did you guys, like, have a little name or anything, or is that just in your head?
No. I mean, like, you go natural Three Musketeers or something like that.
But you had opportunity as being a young leader to also rise up young leaders behind you in this ministry. So just talk about how you did that, I know you kind of looked for people that other people flock to, but just talk about rising up leaders behind you, even being a young leader.
I naturally love coaching. I was a wrestling coach for a couple years, and I just love that idea that I can cheerlead for somebody and watch them succeed. Andy Stanley's the one who constantly says, the greatest thing you will do in your life might not be something you do, but someone you raise. And so for me, it was like, okay, how can I get people underneath me that I can raise up and watch succeed? And we've all seen that model where ministry is kind of hinging on one primary person and how unhealthy that is. And so we wanted to avoid that. And honestly, as a young leader, transitions are so inevitable almost. I mean, when I think about my 20s, my entire 20s, I moved from South Dakota to Minneapolis to Virginia to Iowa, and I went from multiple churches. It was just constantly moving around. And so when I think about leadership transitions, it's kind of inevitable too within the church. And we strive for longevity, but transitions do happen. And so when I transitioned out of young adult ministry, kind of what Logan was saying a little bit, it's hard to watch someone. It's almost like you raise this baby and now you're giving them up for adoption to some new parents, and you're like, I wouldn't parent like that. You have those thoughts. Yeah. And we talked about this yesterday in my session with Randy Jumper, is you want to be a presence to them, and if they want help, you're there, and you're there to help guide them. But if they're not asking for it, I try to just keep my mouth closed. And so it's allowing that leader space to actually grow into the position. And so that's what I was trying to be intentional with as I transitioned out of young adults, which was hard, but I did my best to cheerlead the next person that came in. So.
Yeah, and let them figure it out. If, they fail, it's okay, but they're having to figure it out for themselves on their own.
In those first 6 months after I transitioned, I was in those meetings. I was help planning those events and talking to the next leader about what they can do and giving them options, and talking to my people that I know to help them out. So I was doing my best to help them, but like I said, if I wasn't being asked the question, I wasn't bringing things up if I wasn't being asked. Yeah,
that balance between I'm not just throwing it at you and walking away, but I'm also here, but I'm not too much here, so you don't feel like you have to do exactly what I did.
Exactly.
It's that balance of,
exactly.
Bring them up. Talk a little bit about your calling versus your identity and just your journey with becoming a pastor and maybe not going the way you thought, or just realizing, your calling versus your identity with that.
Yeah. I heard someone speak on this a handful of years ago, but they basically said, for your job, typically people will wear a uniform, and that you are not your uniform. And that really has kind of stuck with me, that it's always so sad to me when I see a pastor who God calls out of the ministry and they lose their identity because their identity was found in being a pastor.
Yeah, we see that all the time.
Yeah, and it's so sad. And honestly, that is a prayer that I pray semi-consistently in my own life, is that I wouldn't be tied to my uniform, because if God calls me outside of ministry, that I would be obedient to that.
Yeah, that's good.
And so maybe right now there's someone watching this who's saying, man, I've been in banking my entire life, and my bachelor's degree is in business management, and so you kind of feel stuck.
Yeah.
You feel like your identity is stuck in that.
Yes.
And my challenge would be to you is to be obedient to the calling. And you're not called to those things. You're called to God, and your identity is found in God and not in your job.
Yeah, that's good. How important is it for your daily life to be disciplined? I think that's a theme throughout yesterday and last night with a couple of the speaker with Pastor Brad, is just, you can talk about it more in your own life, but what you do in your own personal life flows over into everything that you're doing. And I think we forget to do that as leaders and pastors too. My life and what I'm doing, what I'm walking, is so important with the people I'm leading. So anything you have to say about just living your life disciplined as yourself?
Yeah. When I first started in full-time youth ministry, I was 20 years old. I had 2 years of schooling under my belt, and they were mainly gen eds. So it was hardly any Bible stuff. And here I was, a full-time pastor. And I remember, getting into it going, I have no idea what I'm doing. And I'm so thankful. We were talking about this, Logan brought this question up yesterday, that your theology when you were younger, and I cringe and think about some of the sermons that I gave, and I have to.
No one remembers that.
Yes, I literally have to shut it off at night sometimes when I think about the things I said. But I'm so thankful we never had live streaming our podcast.
Recorded.
Yeah, exactly. It would have been terrible. But I realized then, and I started myself on a journey of discipline in my studies, because I knew that if I wanted to give people real answers to the very real problems that they had, I needed to be studied. And I realized that longevity in ministry required me to know more. And so that's when I started. Luckily I had a mentor at the time who was speaking life into me, encouraging me down the route of getting credentialed. And so that was kind of the journey of me starting to study. So becoming certified, becoming licensed, then ordained, finishing my bachelor's degree, finishing my master's degree.
Wow.
Over these past 12 years. It's just been continuously learning.
Yeah.
And so I would challenge whoever's watching. That's the one thing that scares me about next gen leadership, is that we aren't equipped enough. We have tons of resources all around us, but we're not staying disciplined in them and actually the daily kind of routine.
People just think, I can just Google it and I'll figure
Exactly.
it out.
But when someone's sitting in your office and they're struggling with some real life things and you
can't
need
be
answers
like,
right now.
Let me get my computer really quick.
And it's acceptable to say, I don't know the answer.
That's good. That's
or
true.
to say, hey, let's ask somebody else.
Yeah.
But I would challenge you, don't let that be your crutch, because it doesn't always need to be that answer.
That's good. That's really good. All right, we got maybe time for one last question here. Brent Silkey says, how can a young adult ministry leader cultivate momentum in their local church in regards to engaging young adults in serving?
Ooh, that is really good. That is really good.
Time commitment
Yeah.
can be hard.
Yeah.
So yeah, how do you do that?
Yeah, to actually throw something on your calendar and require that of people is really hard. And especially like we were talking about, for a group of people that don't necessarily love to plan out far enough and facilitate some serving.
Like every first Sunday I'm doing this.
Yes.
It's hard to get people. Yeah.
It's very difficult. But again, I would lean back towards everything rises and falls on leadership. And so if it's something that is in your heart serving, then it'll flow out of you. You will find those opportunities. I remember in my young adult small group, that was a priority of mine, that I said, we're not going to just sit and meet in my living room and watch a video and do discussion questions every week. That every once in a while, let's take breaks and let's go serve people.
That's good.
So I would poll the group, because I didn't have all the answers for serving either, and I wanted to do things and make people feel like they were contributing by asking, what do you think would be some good opportunities? And that's when we found out, hey, there's this grandma down the street. Her house, literally paint chips are falling off all around it, needs it to be painted, needs wood fixed. So we went down there, we painted her house, we fixed it. And so I guess I would ask you to lean on the people that are around you in your small groups or in your young adult ministry and ask them, hey guys, what needs are you seeing that you want to help with?
Yeah, and then get some skin in the game.
Exactly.
Yeah, doing that. Awesome. Well, again, we could keep just chatting all day. So good. But you were also on the podcast the first season. So if you want to hear more about what we were talking about, a lot more, that was an hour conversation. It's a little longer than 20 minutes. So check that out. And then also you're going to be hosting a breakout room coming up too. So if you have more questions for Jimmy and everything that you're doing, can go there. So thank you so much for your time and this conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for this opportunity as well for me to interview you guys. It's so fun. And next up, we're going to go to the main Zoom because we're going to hear from Dr. Sammy Kim all about mental health. I'm so excited for this. He's a smart guy. He is. About mental health and just relating that to young adult and ministry in the church. So head over to the main Zoom and hear from Dr. Sammy.